All right, thank you everyone for coming to the presentation tonight. We have Russell joining. It's my honor to have Russell on the Zoom meeting. I've known Russell for many years. I think I first met him when he was in middle school. Russell is not a typical STEM kid. So today we'll learn more about his journey throughout middle school and mainly probably on high school. Before we get started, let me first introduce myself. My name is Ted Kai, and I am the co-founder of Momentum Learning. Our main goal is to help students to improve their performance on many academic competitions, such as math, coding, biology, and others. But today, we'll focus on Russell's journey, not Momentum Learning. So with that said, let me briefly introduce Russell. As I mentioned, I've known him for a long time. In middle school, he wasn't just doing STEM from the very beginning. Actually, he started, as a matter of fact, he started doing tennis when he was very young. And later on, he made super champ in Texas, which is super impressive. So even in middle school, I think Russell did tennis. Russell did STEM related math, for example. And also he did debate, and that actually he did quite well in debate. But I noticed that in high school, Russell, you actually stopped doing debate. So this is something I think maybe you can talk about when you are going through your presentation. How did you decide what activities you want to continue in high school and what to drop? And maybe give us some examples, like debate or maybe other activities as well. What's your reasoning? How do you prioritize things? This will be extremely helpful to the audience here, as everybody's kind of struggling with so many different things in high school. And we come to time management. How did you manage your time? I know in high school, you're still doing sports and you are the captain of your school track team as well as a tennis team. So how did you manage your time? Because sports is just taking so much time every day. I assume you have to go to practice. In addition, I think you are the chief editor of your school newspaper and you have won many different awards in writing. So I think many of us are curious, how did you get started in writing? Was it in middle school or even earlier? Did you go to some camps? Did your parents help you to get started? How did you motivate yourself to get interested in that to start with? And how did you continue throughout the high school? I did not mention your RSI. I know it's one of the biggest accomplishments that you have because we've had quite a few STEM kids. And in the next few presentations, I think we'll have people probably discussing RSI and some other things as well. So today, you can probably briefly comment on the RSI. More importantly, we want to learn how to prioritize things. How did you struggle with time management? Not struggle. How did you manage it really well? And how did you start on the writing? All right, so now I'm turning this to Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Tsai, for the wonderful introduction. As Mr. Tsai said, I'm Russell, and I'm just going to be talking a bit about my high school experience tonight and maybe give a few tips and pointers on how y'all could also navigate the high school experience as well. So a brief bio about me is on the previous slide. I believe that RSI, Scholastic, my experience with the school newspaper and captaining the tennis and cross country teams were listed. But in addition to that, in high school, some of the things I did were attending the MathWorks Honor Summer Math Camp twice. That's a residential summer program that I can talk more about later. It's very mathematical based, very heavy in pure math. I'm actually there right now. You may see this like bed in my background. I'm serving as a counselor there this summer. So that was one thing. I played a lot of tennis throughout high school and even more in middle school. As Mr. Tsai mentioned, I was a super champ in USTA 12s, 14s, 16s, and 18s. I think I was like a 2-star, 3-star recruit at my peak. And so I played a lot of tennis, especially in middle school and definitely quite a bit in high school as well. I was pretty involved in my school community in high school. I led a lot of clubs and participated in a lot of clubs as well. One of the clubs that I was a president for was Science Olympiad. I think I first became a leader my junior year and then was like president my senior year. In addition to that, I founded a tutoring organization called 5-Star Tutoring that provides like one-on-one free online tutoring to disadvantaged students basically anywhere around Houston / the country. And I also did some competitions, one of which is the AMY. I think one of my paths throughout, or one of my key important lessons throughout high school is that I really think the mindset, not necessarily the accomplishments, is a way to drive how people should be thinking about high school. Personally, my mindset was to really get excited about everything that I participated in and to look for role models who were maybe a couple years before me and who I wanted to emulate, not just in terms of like what they were doing, but also how they were doing it. Oh, and I think we've forgot to mention, but this fall I'll be a freshman at Harvard. So I want to structure the talk today about how we can focus on self-betterment. And one of the key things that I try to focus on throughout high school was how can I make a positive difference, not just to myself and my family, but also the broader community. And so I found that there's a couple of key components of doing this, one of which is, of course, becoming holistically developed, which I think means becoming skilled in multiple areas, not necessarily just STEM or writing or sports, but being able to synthesize these different fields and become an all-around kind of well-rounded person who's able to learn new things pretty quickly and also apply concepts from different areas to new topics. In addition to that, I would say it's very important to be able to serve as a mentor and guide for others. This kind of stems from becoming holistically developed, because I think when people are holistically developed in many different areas, it can help them have expertise in those areas and therefore pass on that expertise to future generations and therefore lead to definitely more success and happiness for all involved. And so holistically developed may be kind of a nebulous term. And so the way I sought to be holistically developed was to explore 3 fields or areas really in depth. And those 3 fields for me were STEM, writing, and leadership. So let's first talk about STEM and why it's important. I think STEM is one of the most important skills that any student should have for several reasons. First, it's intrinsically beautiful. Everything around the world can be described in STEM. And because of this fact that everything around the world can be described through STEM, STEM is of course really useful, right? Like how can you understand the world if you don't have a really solid grasp on one or more STEM skills? And so kind of in alignment with that, being skilled at STEM, whether it's like math, physics, biology, chemistry, CS, etc., gives people hard skills that you'll find hard to lose, right? The analytical thinking you gain with math, or physics, your intuition, your problem-solving ability, your ability to work in teams sometimes if you're tackling a problem together, those are all very important things that will help you in your daily life. As well as that, there are intangibles involved in learning STEM that will change the way that you think and you act. If you begin approaching different scenarios with more of a growth mindset, as in like how can I apply the different strategies I know to solve this problem, I think that the end result will be much more satisfying and definitely much more positive for all involved. So as a brief overview of my STEM journey, I was a bit of a contest math kid in middle school. Definitely not like a mop or anything, but I made Amy quite a few times in high school, and generally I did better on Amy than the AMC. And I did in fact go to Momentum. I think it's a great training program for anything STEM based. So Amy was one. In addition to that, I really found enjoyment in my school STEM courses. I kind of approached STEM as not just how can I like get better at one specific competition, but how can I learn more about the world and how can I interweave different topics together more effectively. And so I found that quickly I became excited about not just competition math, but in fact also pure math. I mentioned earlier that I attended the MathWorks Honor Summer Math Camp after my freshman and sophomore years in high school. And that pure math that pure math experience really helped me develop not just better math knowledge in fields like real analysis and number theory, but it also gave me a kind of perspective, a problem-solving perspective that I took to the rest of my high school experience. After that, I was also very passionate about like my school's physics and chemistry classes. Even though before high school, I always found physics as something that people would take in junior year and people would really struggle with. I found that after learning more about STEM, I really found these types of classes enjoyable. And I even enjoyed my school's organic chemistry class, believe it or not. Like that's like the one class that all people going to medical school really want to take and they have to take it and they're just nervous about it. But I found it was actually really enjoyable. So I think that's the beauty of STEM. This path of exploration, driving people to not only gain a better understanding of the world, but also a greater appreciation of what these subjects mean. So the second major field that I really spent a lot of time in was writing. And this kind of manifested in several ways. As Mr. Tsai mentioned, I was really involved with my school's newspaper, which is called The Review. I was an editor-in-chief of that my senior year. In addition to that, I also participated heavily in the Scholastic competition starting in freshman year. For those of you who don't really know what the Scholastic competition is, I think the official name is called the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. And there's a lot of different like writing and art categories that people can enter. You'd be affiliated with your school, and there's a lot of different genres that you can submit work in. I'm not really too much of an artist, so I don't know that much about the drawing / painting side of things, but as in writing, you can submit short stories, critical essays, dramatic script, poetry, flash fiction, etc., journalism. So there's a ton of different really places that you can submit in that competition. And so that was kind of the bulk of the writing I did throughout high school. And I think writing in particular is extremely important because at the foundational level, everybody has to be able to communicate effectively. It doesn't really matter what you end up doing. I think communication is an essential part of every relationship, the family relationships, the friend or social relationships, and definitely workplace relationships. Writing is used all the time. And I think it also kind of translates to speaking as well. But yeah, you see writing in like press releases, emails, reports, all of that. So I think being a strong writer, not just a fast writer, but a skilled writer is something that's extremely, extremely important. And I'm seeing that there are some questions in the chat that are coming up. I'll answer all questions during the Q&A section at the end. But yeah, first I'll get through the presentation and then I'll try to get through all of the questions. So as I was kind of saying, writing isn't only intrinsically enjoyable, but it also has practical implications. And I also feel that writing can help you to remain grounded in reality and kind of connect with how you're feeling and also how what's happening in the world, right? Like you can write about basically anything, but it gives you a way to put your thoughts on paper and translate your thoughts. Sometimes they're incoherent, sometimes they're very long and rambling, into something that you can share with others and that you can have for yourself and remember for a long time. And kind of to build off of that, I'll talk about writing more later, but a brief note about writing. I think that reading always comes first. I really started getting interested in writing because I would read a lot when I was in elementary and middle school. I think one of like either my middle school or freshman year report cards would say that like I was like a voracious reader or something, and that I could like never put down the books. And I think reading is where people get ideas from, where they get inspiration from writing, because a lot of people don't really have the experience in the real world to be able to write about a diverse array of topics. But reading to me is how you gain those experiences. And as a kid, I would read like all types of books. They weren't really like advanced textbooks. I mean, I read like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, all of that stuff. I'll like sometimes like read the news just to keep up to date with what was happening. I'll basically read everything. And so before I transition, I just want to say that reading is an essential part of being able to write and being able to enjoy writing. Now, the third part of my developing a holistic personality talk kind of stems around leadership. And what I think about leadership is I don't necessarily only think about somebody in charge and ordering people around, but I think of a mentor and somebody that the younger people really want to emulate and that they're happy to follow or receive instructions from, because they believe that like the leader truly has their best interests in mind. And I think leadership is all about practicing reinforcing your own skills while you're helping others. So you're not just getting better at what you're doing, right? Like, for example, if I was to teach, let's say, a math class, and I was to maybe explain some problems or some proofs to people who weren't as clear on what they are, that could perhaps give me a better concrete understanding of what I'm doing. Leadership does that, and it also allows you to help other people. And that's what's intrinsically so valuable about leadership. And in alignment with that, if you kind of go with the fact that leadership can help other people as well, then that means being a leader allows you to create something bigger than one person. And this is kind of something that I found through my own experiences. Really, when I started leadership roles, I wasn't really intending to create something huge per se, but through my experiences with my own tutoring service, 5-star tutoring, I found that being an effective leader really does allow you to unite people and motivate them to accomplish something that's bigger than any one person can do. And so in terms of leadership, I would say that leadership can also help build habits that are centered around holding yourself to a higher standard that you would hold yourself in other scenarios, and possibly also to a higher standard that you would hold other people. Kind of going on a tangent here, but my school's tennis team always has the mantra that like the captain has to be the one who's most accountable to the team. As the leader of the team, they have to inspire the team to succeed. And therefore, when the leader is not being entirely responsible, then the leader will be held to maybe a greater punishment to the team as well. And so the habits that I mentioned with leadership are resilience, being able to kind of tie together different circumstances and push toward differences among like team members and overcome obstacles together. Decisiveness, as in like knowing when to make a decision, how to communicate that decision to everyone. Being open, which to me means having your teammates or your subordinates, etc., trust you and really come to you and communicate with you. And the last thing about leadership is being able to plan really well. I think a lot of leaders, because they're in situations where they're also responsible for many other people, they need to really have concrete and good ways of planning methodically so that they can be able to juggle all those things effectively and make sure that everything is running as a well-oiled machine as it should. So I think that these fields of STEM, writing, and leadership aren't only good by themselves. I think there's some sort of synergy involved between them, as in like they reinforce each other. Some of you may have heard the term, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I would say that I definitely subscribe to this methodology. If you consider somebody like Bill Gates, right, like the Microsoft founder, who he is like a technical genius, but he's also an expert communicator, and he has like a vision, he's a visionary, right? Like he has the idea to create a personal computer that's basically accessible to everyone. And so I think that is kind of the person who, or the type of person who people should be striving to be. And sometimes, as Mr. Tsai mentioned, when he referenced time management, it really does seem like a time crunch. And when you have to write, like for me, I would have to like sometimes wake up at 5 a.m. for cross country, run in the morning, go to school right after, come back from school 4:30 p.m. Sometimes like 5:30, 6:30 p.m. I have newspaper and like do all my homework, which y'all probably know how long that takes. It takes a while sometimes. And so it does seem like a time crunch, but these activities I found they reinforce each other and they help improve mastery. An example I'll give is that as a STEM person, I find that being able to communicate and write about STEM to others really clarifies my thinking. And it means that I really have to understand every single step of what's happening in a problem or a concept, because if I don't, that means it's not going to be evident in my writing, and the person who I'm communicating it to, right, whether I'm writing it an email to them or whether I'm giving them a tutoring session, isn't going to be able to understand fully. So in this case, I think being able to communicate and being able to do STEM are very important, right? And so this is kind of similar to the concept of cross-training in sports. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with this topic, but for instance, if I'm a runner, I might also do aqua jogging, like running in the water, which can help improve specific muscle memory, or like biking, or even like weightlifting, right? Like these activities all reinforce each other. And another part of this synergy, which I think is so beautiful, is I think you can avoid burnout from over participating in any one activity if you kind of spread yourself around and do several different types of activities. And burnout, this is really important because I think burnout can impact anyone, whether you're like an Olympiad level competitor or like a Division I level runner. I've known many different people of different circumstances, all of whom were so skilled at what they did and passionate about it as well, to have burnout and just suffer from that. And I think that's something really important that I would like people to avoid if at all possible. So the three key principles that I want everybody to keep in mind when trying to achieve this synergy between STEM, writing, and leadership are: one, broad exploration of a lot of different topics; two, making thoughtful choices about the things that people would want to do; and three, when an opportunity comes, be ready to take advantage of it, because you never know how big that opportunity might be. So the first principle is that of broad exploration. And I would basically summarize this as: don't be afraid to try a lot of things and fail at all of them. There's an Einstein quote, I believe, that says that like if you've never failed, then like you haven't tried anything, or some form of that. But I think that the whole process of finding a passion should be really process centric over outcome centric. And that means that I think people should be learning to learn, not necessarily to like chase an outcome, right? Like not necessarily to chase a USAMO qualification or a Scholastic Gold medal or a USTA like top 50 ranking necessarily, because a lot of these outcomes won't really be relevant beyond high school or maybe college, but your skills that you gain, right? Like your problem solving ability, your leadership ability, your communications ability, and the friendships and other relationships that you build also will last for a long time. And so what broad exploration is all about, I think, is being able to try a lot of things and invest like some time into all of them, give all of them a shot. Don't just like half-heartedly, like, I don't know, do some like AMC problems one day, do some USACO problems another day, try to like go write like for 10 minutes another day and just like not do anything. Put like several hours into different topics that you want to do and really see if you enjoy them. And then once you find a passion, latch onto it. Okay, so y'all might be thinking, okay, Russell, this is great. You talked about finding passions. How in the world am I supposed to find a passion that I can really pursue for a long time? And this is a really big topic. Some people have passions and they know they have passions from a young age, but others don't really find that until like middle or high school. So I would say the first thing you can do is you can maybe make a list of role models. I guess they can be role models like big shots, like, you know, Bill Gates, like Musk, Zuckerberg, etc., but also like role models like students a couple years older in high school. And then maybe you can consider them for some preliminary ideas. Now, I don't mean that like you find a student like a few years older than you and then you try to copy like activity for activity what they did. But I think it's important to be cognizant of what people are doing and the different opportunities that are out there for everybody. And so if you have a couple activities in mind, maybe you can imagine like what you would do. This is just like random hypothetical scenario, what you would do on a summer day or a long weekend. You have no schoolwork. If your friends are on vacation, your family's busy, and like your YouTube, social media, TV, video games are all blocked. Just like take a moment and think about what you would do. And you don't necessarily have to have one passion per se. It can be multiple things that you would like to do. And then to that, I say, just try them out. As an example, I'll talk about research. So I think Mr. Tsai mentioned that I went to RSI, and I did go to RSI. I did research in high school, scientific and mathematical research. And I really found that this inspiration was from a research class that I took at high school. It's called Scientific Research and Design. And so in this class, we students were able to read papers about virtually any scientific topic or academic topic and present our takeaways from the papers each class, and maybe compile a list of like the next papers we wanted to read and what connections we found between these papers and other papers. And we were also able to listen to other people's presentations and get a sense of like, oh, what are like the different scientific fields? What am I trying to find cool? What am I finding cool? What might I want to try to study? Stuff like that. And so everybody's inspired in different ways. And of course, your school doesn't have to have a research class for you to be inspired in this type of thing. But I just think that it all goes back again to reading, that exposing yourself to a lot of different materials can help you really get a sense of what's out there. and therefore become really passionate about something and dive deeply into it. There are programs that exist that can help connect students with mentors. If you find that it's like difficult to find like a research mentor or something, I attended, as I said before, the MathWorks Honor Summer Math Camp. It's in San Marcos, Texas. And they also have a middle school version called like the Junior Summer Math Camp. I attended that one in middle school when I was a rising freshman. And I attended the Honor Summer Math Camp when I was a rising sophomore and a rising junior. So after my 9th and 10th grade years. And so that camp teaches like a lot of pure math topics. Like first years learn number theory, second years will learn like real analysis, combinatorics, and third years will continue to learn real analysis and they also learn abstract algebra. And one other facet of this camp is starting as a second year student, you can conduct research. And of course, the math camp will pair you with like experienced professors at Texas State, and you'll do research in like a team of fellow students. I always enjoyed my research groups. I thought that they were all very motivated and that the problems we were tackling were fantastic and very meaningful. And just as a bit of logistical information of how to apply to this camp, I can link the website in the chat later, but you can apply in like 8th grade, 9th grade, even 10th grade, I guess, to be a first year student. And the application is not like super in depth. I feel like everybody can apply. So I highly recommend people apply if at all possible. And this seems like something you want to do. And again, I think research is really special in that everyone charts their own path. It's non-linear and people have different starts. If you talk to, I think Stephanie Wong, she also went to RSI, she presented yesterday. She maybe had a different start to research than I did. Just people have like different introductions to these activities. And so it's not about like how you start, it's about whether you can find something that interests you within that activity and just dive into it. I also find that research is individually very empowering. The practice of being able to like conduct a project by yourself or like with a team with like supervision from a mentor, but not like a mentor holding your hand all the way. And I think this is especially reflected at RSI. I won't go too much into RSI, but I think RSI is at its heart like a research program. And in that, it's not necessarily too much different from other forms of research that you might be conducting, but it's just an opportunity for you to conduct serious scientific and academic research under a really expert mentor and be surrounded by other passionate STEM scholars. Another example of a passion is critical writing. So I'll talk more about my writing process. I think that in high school, other than journalism, a lot of the writing I did was critical writing. And that's kind of like the analytical and like argumentative essays that you might see on like your school, in your school papers when you get into like junior or senior year. And so the way I started my writing process is that as a kid, I would read really often. I would read a ton of actual books. I already mentioned Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, stuff like that. I had like so many bookshelves at home, so many that like we would fill the coffee table up with books and be like, they'd be overflowing. I'd bring like books to the restroom and be like flipping for like 30 minutes on end, which is kind of excessive. I remember one day for breakfast, my mom had to run an errand or something. So I was like eating breakfast, and basically she came back like 45 minutes to an hour later, and she found that I was still eating only a bowl of oatmeal, but that I would also have been reading the whole time. And so basically I would take every opportunity to read when I was a little kid. I think the reading really gives motivation or it really gives people the it gives people the impression that they want to explore different ideas and they want to write. And so in high school, I'll more often skim Wikipedia and news outlets, right? Like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, Politico, stuff like that. If I don't have the time to read actual books, the genre I don't think matters too much. I think like fantasy, mystery, fiction, science fiction, historical fiction, all that is great. That doesn't matter too much, but what matters is really paying attention to what you read and not just reading for the enjoyment of it, right? Not just reading to say like, oh my gosh, there's like something funny is happening in this scene. It's to think about, oh, okay, so something interesting is happening in the scene. What's the relationship between like different characters, different actors in this scene? What is the author doing that I can learn? Like, how are they communicating their ideas? Like, how do I know that different people are feeling different emotions? What do I like about this writing? What don't I like? Stuff like that. And writing can also help you get an awareness with social issues, which I think is so important in this day and age. Being cognizant and linked to a lot of different social issues is something that I think everybody in society should be involved in. And this awareness can be really connected with critical writing. For instance, if I'll get to this, actually I'll get to this in a few seconds. But once you find topics that you care about through reading about like whatever you want, like Wikipedia, like news outlets, STEM, social issues, novels, etc., you can start writing about it. And your writing doesn't necessarily have to be perfect at first. No first draft is ever perfect. Remember that when you're writing. And you can repeat your writing for like multiple different topics. I think it's really how practicing is how you improve as a writer and get better at communicating your ideas. There is no necessarily one set formula to writing. I just think the process of like first figuring out some ideas that you want to explore, then like maybe creating an outline of your argument, making sure it makes like logical sense, and then just like writing about it, like typing it up. And then repeating that over, could be by yourself, could be like you could like show your parents, show your friends, stuff like that. But that's really how people can get started as writers. And I would emphasize ideas over technical proficiency at first. You need to make sure you have solid ideas before you start writing very complicated jargon with like tough vocab that people find it difficult to understand. So again, when reading, I would consider modern day connections and reasons for the author's choices. And to go back to social issues, when you're writing, you can perhaps try to connect a novel with a real world phenomenon that's happening, try to piece them together to extract greater meaning out of a novel. And of course, you can submit work to contests like the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards through your school. I think you need to talk with your English teacher to make an educator account to submit to the awards, but you would basically submit as many pieces as you want. There's like at least 10, maybe 15, 19, 20 genres. So any type of writing can be submitted. Like probably no piece is too short or too long. Well, I guess the limit is like 500 words and 3,000 words for most pieces. So that kind of gives you an idea of how long it should be. But basically, I would say writing is something I enjoyed doing because I loved reading. And I found that it really helped me stay connected with the real world. And fortunately, there was a contest that I could submit many of my essays to and that I could gain recognition for them at. And so the second principle I want to make is that of thoughtful choices. And this also links to time management. It's really tough to be able to juggle so many activities through high school, right? Like there's the GPA grind and you want to do extracurriculars. Maybe you want to do STEM, maybe you want to do writing, maybe sports. You want to probably volunteer community service as well. And of course, having a social life. So just so many things to balance. And I think that's why being able to make choices is incredibly important. And that links to picking the activities that matter most to you. My personal metric, it's different for everyone, but what I did is whether I would be excited to get out of bed and do these things every day, not just once, but like repeat it over and over and over again. And I would kind of think about this. And I kind of gained a perspective on this based on my like prior exploration of different things, right? So these like principles are also linking to each other. Through my experience like playing tennis, which I'll get to later, I would decide like whether I wanted to like play tennis or like run cross country and stuff like that. And so I quite literally did have to get out of bed and do them every day. I'd get up like 5 a.m., maybe like 5:15, 5:20, something at the latest. Most days from like start of August, like start of November for cross country. And so that's kind of, if you think about it, that is quite a bit of time commitment. And it does like limit the amount of sleep I can get and the time I can focus on other things. So I have to be conscious of the fact that I will really enjoy those activities. And I think that people need to keep in mind, even the small choices they make are really important because it builds a habit of making choices in the future and like building a habit of like making bigger choices, right? Like if you're gonna say like, oh, today I'm going to like I have a choice between whether I want to like do my homework, right? Like finish my homework early, or whether I want to like play some video games, right? I need to play this hot new video game that came out. Maybe it doesn't seem like a huge choice. Maybe it's just like a 1 day thing. But if you consider those choices over time, then they'll really build up and become something bigger. So I would say remain cognizant of every single choice that you make every day. And that doesn't say limit yourself, like don't like limit yourself to like certain activities, but just keep in mind that like everything you should do should like be for a purpose, right? And of course, don't purely base what you're doing on what other people are doing, right? You have like different goals, you have different paths. Um, for instance, in the math community, I knew that like I was probably never going to be like as talented like like as a competition mathematician as like Andrew Tai, as Luke Robitaille. Those guys are gods. But we each found our own way. We each found our own passions. And so I think that's what's really important, being able to find a path for yourself and not just try to emulate others, right? Because that's not going to make you happy and it might not make you successful either. So my reasoning for choice is this activity something that I'm going to enjoy? Kind of like paraphrasing Charles Dickens, right? Like, will I enjoy it in the best of times? Will I be able to manage in the worst of times? Second is, will I be able to gain something tangible, as in like a skill or a friendship out of this activity? Every close friend matters. Every skill that you gain, whether it's like improved hand-eye coordination, improved like writing speed, improved like problem-solving ability in math, they all matter. And so to that point, basically, are you doing this activity for a purpose? And then third, what will like my long-term participation in the activity look like? Like, will it be sustainable over time? If I'm doing like 3 sports, right? Like, am I going to be able to protect my body over time? Those are all things that you have to consider when you're making choices. And so don't just make choices in the moment or based on what other people are doing, but really think about what's best for you and what you want to do and what the future could look for you feasibly. And to go along with time management, I think time management is a really important part of decision making. And it's extremely important throughout high school because everybody knows like high school students, a lot of them don't have time, right? It's like, oh gosh, like I need to finish my homework, I need to cram for a test, blah, 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 time runs out. And so the first thing is make like plans and to-do lists on both like the big and small skill levels. So if you have like a really important thing, like several months in advance, right? Let's say like Scholastic Art and Writing Awards submission deadline is like early December, right? So that means maybe I need to have like all of the work I want to submit by like November, right? Have like deadlines in the future that you don't want big things creeping up on you and you having to do them at the last minute, right? And also on the micro levels, you can make daily plans, right? Like to-do lists of things like I want to accomplish thing 1, thing 2, thing 3 by today, right? I want to study for my math test. I want to get an outline for my English paper. I want to finish my history reading, right? I want to go on like a 3-mile run if I can. And you just want to have all those things listed so it will help you remain accountable to them. I really recommend Google Calendar for like Zoom meetings and deadlines because you can like integrate different calendars and it's a very like seamless service. They'll even like send you reminders. You can also like estimate the amount of time it will take you to do certain tasks. For instance, you can be like, okay, let's say I need to sleep at, I don't know, 11:30 p.m. If I know it's going to take me like, if I know I need to finish like a reading, right? And let's say it'll take me like an hour to do like a history reading, right? And I don't know, 30 minutes to finish my math homework. And then I'll know like how much time I have to spend on other activities, right? I can maybe shorten the dinner time I have with my family. I can work on like really being quick in the restroom, stuff like that, right? And I can really prioritize the things that I need to do each day and try to condense them. And you may start experienced judging the amount of time that you're going to spend per activity and like wildly misjudge like time commitments. I definitely found that even when like compiling simple spreadsheets, like writing emails, I would take a lot longer than I thought, but you're going to get better over time. And if you don't start, then you're really never going to have the opportunity to get very strong at it. So I recommend that you try to do that exercise for your daily tasks. And it's also really important to incorporate breaks into your plan. I can't really focus for like 5+ hours easily. I admire the people who can, but that's just not me, right? And that just not everybody. And so after like every 1 hour, maybe like 2 hours, and I'm really focused, I'll like go walk around the neighborhood, right? I'll take a walk around the block. I'll get myself a glass of water, maybe like peel myself some oranges, right here, just in case I ever feel hungry. But take some breaks once in a while, but just structure the breaks so that they're not too long, not too short, maybe like 15 minutes, because you don't want to like try to grind for like 5 hours and get like really mentally tired, then just like laze around for like 2, 3, 4 hours and not be productive. I think working for shorter bursts and then giving your brain a time to relax and refresh itself before working again is a tactic that really worked for me, and maybe it will also work for you. Fourth thing is that multitasking doesn't really exist. You may hear that like, oh, I can do like two things at the same time. I can like do two like different assignments simultaneously. That's not really true, unless there's a caveat. If you're trying to think about something and let it ruminate around in your mind for a long time, sometimes on like, for example, Amy problems, I would like get stuck. So I would like think about them like for a while, then I would like go walk around and I think about them some more. And I'd find out, oh, like walking around, it would not only help my brain get like distracted away from the problem, but also be like thinking in the background. So that would kind of help me walk, like slash exercise, get fresh air and feel refreshed, but also help my thinking process and stay productive. So that's like the one form of multitasking that I really endorse, like taking walks and being able to like refresh yourself. Also, power naps are really, really good. I found that I would take like power naps for like 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes. I didn't get my driver's license until like senior year. So I would sometimes like even like sleep while my parents like driving me like to and from school. That's really important. I would say try to seize all the time you have in a day to try to maximize your rest and make sure you're refreshed for what you need to do. So an example of a choice I had to make was newspaper versus debate. I think we kind of mentioned that I did debate in middle school, and I had a lot of experience with debate. I did LD, and I was a 2-time national quarterfinalist. I only lost like 2 rounds of the national tournament in 8th grade. Both of them were to the guy who won it eventually, and like the one in the quarters was like a 2-1 decision, and apparently it was very, very tight. And so I think that if I'd continued debate throughout high school, I would have at least had a solid foundation to build upon. But again, I had to plan ahead, and I had to consider the choices that I had. I needed to think about like the size of my school debate team. St. John's, the school I attended, it's a private school in Houston. It does not have a huge debate team, especially for LD. So I needed to think about how much support I'll be receiving, whether or not my teammates would be able to like accompany me. Right, like I didn't have like a debate powerhouse like Lexington or Harvard Westlake or even like Strake Jesuit in Houston. So I envisioned that I might be better off going to like a newspaper organization that was more established, right? And where I didn't have to like fight the headwinds on every single thing that I had to do. And so that kind of goes back to thinking about not only whether you're going to enjoy this activity, but about like the broader like long-term sustainability of the activity. I also wanted a broader skill set. I felt that like I'd already gained a pretty good grasp on public speaking and being able to collect sources and analyze them through my experience with LD. But I thought that I definitely needed to improve my writing skills when I was entering freshman year. So I decided to join the newspaper because why not, right? And then another thing was, this is just a personal choice, the impact on others. It's purely my opinion, but I just felt we had more direct advocacy and community reach when writing articles. And again, this choice that I made was based on my own opinions and my own thinking. So y'all do not have to think the same way or act the same way. I think debate is a wonderful activity. I have so many good friends who do debate and who are really talented in debate and love debate. But I'm just saying that people need to make choices based on their own circumstances, right? So if you think debate is for you, then you can do debate. If you think newspaper is for you, then do debate. Or sorry, then do newspaper. I'm just recommending that you be really careful and plan ahead for the choices that you're going to make. Another example was tennis versus cross country. In middle school, I played tennis a lot. My UTR was like an 8 or so in 8th grade, I think. And I was like able to, I played a lot of good matches. I was like a super champ in 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. I was like a 2-star, 3-star recruit on like tennis recruiting back in middle school. And like I played some matches with like people who are the UTR 10s and 11s now, and I even beat them back then. I don't know if I can beat them now, probably not. But I think I was quite experienced with tennis. But I decided to not pursue like the tennis recruits lifestyle in high school, and instead also join the cross country team. I didn't really run cross country in middle school. I had run it in 7th and 8th grade because our school required that we had to play a fall sport. And so again, this boils down to personal choice. Some things that I thought were important were personal influences, as in like the mentorship of my coach on the cross country team and the team culture, right? So sometimes when you're making decisions, you have to consider role models. If you have a role model on a team, then I consider like for sure, like try to spend more time with your role model because that can be really valuable, right? One of my captains was one of the best runners in the conference, and it taught me a lot, not just what it means to be a runner, but how you act disciplined in daily life, right? Like how you eat healthily, how you sleep healthily, and how you treat your teammates. Another thing was the time investment again of playing tennis year round. I found that maybe it was like a better time investment to just do meets on like Saturdays and Sundays for cross country than having to train like 2 hours a day and drive to like, I live in Houston, so like drive to Dallas or like Abilene or even out of state for tournaments. That was too much. And then of course, also there's a personal enjoyment aspect. My personal enjoyment was I didn't want to hit in the sun all day. But again, it boils down to what your personal enjoyment is. So my third principle and the final principle is that of like being ready for any opportunity. And I feel like this is extremely, extremely important because sometimes opportunities come and you don't act on them. And then you're gonna look back later and you're like, oh man, I wish I knew that, right? Like I wish I acted on it when it came. And so I feel the mindset of actively participating in everything you do, not being a bystander, and really stepping up is key. I would recommend looking for opportunities where an additional hand may be needed in doing something, and keep in mind that like asking if there's anything I can do, it can only help. Because from my own experience in the newspaper, as a captain of the cross country team and tennis team, and president of Science Olympiad, I've noticed that a lot of times, if you're an underclassman, juniors and seniors won't necessarily notice you unless you give them a reason to. It's not because they don't like you. I mean, it's just there's too many people out there, right? You need to give them a reason to notice you. And one way of doing that is really stepping up for everything and being super enthusiastic. And of course, you need to back up your words with actions. Cannot make empty promises, right? You can't say like, for example, oh, I'm going to turn in my newspaper article by X day and then like miss the deadline by 2 weeks, right? That's not going to leave a good impression. And then keep in mind that if you take advantage of small opportunities, right? Like your first newspaper article is on time, then your second one, they'll give you a bigger one. Your third one, you may get like 1,000 word article, right? And before you know it, you're at it, right? So small opportunities lead to larger ones. And so one example was for me, the pivotal moment in my school newspaper, The Review, was when COVID hit. As context, I was only like a staff writer on newspaper as a sophomore. So even if you don't join newspaper as a freshman, joining as a sophomore, even joining as a junior, those are all totally fine. And I had a lot of people in my grade, at least like 5 or 6 kids in my grade were in higher ranking positions than me. And so when you look at it from the outside, you may think like, okay, this dude has like no chance of making chief editor, right? Because there are people who are like higher than him, like they're more skilled than him. They're like on time, their quality of writing is better, whatever. And I'd written some articles, but arguably they weren't really that groundbreaking. But this all turned. I decided that I really wanted to be available and to contribute however I could. I didn't really have a plan for how I would do that. And so I think that like it's okay not going into everything with like a concrete idea of exactly what you need to do. But I knew that I wanted to volunteer and just put myself in the conversation. So when COVID hit, I entered the editor deliberation room. I was placed on like our big COVID school cancellation article, interviewed like maybe 11 or so people, including students and alums, and we turned around for publication in 48 hours. And so from that, I became known in the organization as like a COVID beat writer. And I wrote several other like really long articles on COVID's impact to our school, right? Like sports and business, etc. And I found that this was kind of a significant factor towards my editor promotion because I was able to churn out a lot of articles really quickly. I mean, I think they got like better and better as time went on toward the end of the year. And this really opened the door for me becoming editor-in-chief of the school newspaper. So to generalize this example, I don't think that everybody necessarily needs to join newspaper or write COVID articles, right? But it's just that you need to always make sure that you're present when other people are making decisions and just put yourself in there. Don't be afraid to try, and don't be or make sure to keep trying, right? And don't slack off when you know that other people are going to be judging your performance, because that you never know when an opportunity may come that you can take or you can miss, and it can change your life. So I want to start wrapping up before we get to questions by talking about some action items. And I think one of the first important things to do is to brainstorm a passion that you may have if you don't yet have one. Again, this passion can be anything. There's so many other great talks that are happening that are sponsored by Momentum around this time. I recommend like listening to them. Some of the recordings are also online already. They may give you an idea of like what passion you may want to chase. But after brainstorming the passion, start following that passion. And don't be embarrassed if like you're not exactly where you want to be. You want to start like chasing that passion and basically invest a lot of time into it. And you'll soon find that you're in a place that you never would have realized you were a while ago. And then perhaps one of the most important things is to block out time to reflect every day. And this can maybe like 10 to 15 minutes, even 5 minutes, where you like think by yourself and you internalize like the choices you made that day, the topics you decided to explore. You can think about choices that you'll have to make ahead of time in the future, and maybe like get some mental preparation. If you think that there's gonna be like any opportunities coming up in your life soon, just be ready. Keep your mind refreshed, be ready. And here are some potential resources that I think were really helpful for me in high school. Just getting an idea of the high school like landscape and trying to figure out what my own passions were. The MIT admissions blog is great. Even if MIT is not really like the school you're trying to go to, I thought the MIT admissions blog was really valuable in terms of advice on basically anything. The link I've linked here is just a list of like summer camps. And I think all those camps are really valuable. You may consider like applying to some of those programs. And the blogs also give a lot of advice, right? They give you advice on how to be, I think they have advice on like how to be productive, but also how to enjoy life. In terms of writing, I've linked the Scholastic website. It's artandwriting.org. They have like a lot of the medal winning works from past years listed up there. So you can read them and become inspired by like past really good writing. That's also the link to where you would like submit for the competition. And then I linked like this American literature short story website, which it's just a reference for types of books you can read. When I was doing my writing journey, I didn't really follow a specific like course or a specific like writing camp. I just found that reading books and gaining a perspective on them and becoming like fluent in like how to read and like how the English language worked from there helped me in writing. And so these short stories should there should be different genres here, but a lot of the short stories linked here are classics. And I've also linked the blog of Evan Chen. Evan Chen is a very big figure in the contest math community. I think he made like IMO for Taiwan in 2014 and he got a gold medal. But he basically writes things that I thought were very good at helping me establish a healthy and productive perspective on what high school life looked like. So I think these slides will be up there after the talk. And so if you don't get these websites done now, it's fine. You can look at them later. I would highly recommend looking at these websites and spending some time there to try to get an idea of what they're talking about. And so now we'll move to the Q&A phase of the talk. There were some pre-submitted questions that I'll answer first before I get to all the questions in the chat. And the first question is like, how to improve your writing skills? Would you recommend any books or magazines or websites? I think that there's a question on book list later on, so I can talk about specific books later than that. But in terms of magazines or websites, I think reading the news is always like a good place to start. There's some news outlets that are junk, but there are also some news outlets that are really high quality, like New York Times and Wall Street Journal, even like CNN Politico. I found that those are all consistently high quality. The ideas are good and the style of writing is good as well. So if you think about how to emulate how they're writing, I think that would be very valuable. In terms of websites or other references, the Scholastic Awards releases books every year of like some of their top like essays that they've received that year in the competition. So I think maybe going through those essays could also be something valuable. But other than that, I think it really starts with reading. And again, the ideas are more important than the technical ability. I would recommend doing close readings of like essays that you think you should try to like emulate. Not like copying their ideas, but like getting an idea of like how do they write their thesis, right? Like where's their thesis? Is it in the front? Is it in the middle? Usually I think it should be in the front, right? Like what kind of evidence they have to support the thesis, right? What kind of arguments do they make? What kind of logical reasoning do they use, right? Do they appeal to like fallacies, stuff like that? Second question is, my kids mostly enjoy reading fiction. Will reading fiction improve writing skills as well? Absolutely, yes, yes. Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, when I was a kid, were some of my biggest like favorite memories. And these books didn't only help me like learn how to write, but I would spend like a lot of hours like just sitting around like in a chair on the couch even in the shower, I was like imagining what like the world would be like, right? Like, what if I was like Percy Jackson, right? Like, what if I was Harry Potter? Things like that. And I think that's really good for building imagination, reading fiction. And so a lot of the fiction that you see in like the New York Times like, #1 bestsellers or the really famous books, it's not just there because it's entertaining. It's there because the ideas are communicated very clearly, right? Like, for example, Harry Potter is telling the story of how even an orphan with no friends can make himself into one of the greatest wizards of all time, right? Um, and so I think reading fiction is still a really great way to become a greater thinker and a greater writer. In terms of scholarship applications, this is a third question. I didn't really apply to any of like the huge scholarships. I know that there are scholarships like Coolidge and like the Brian Cameron Impact Foundation and Koch, but really I was too busy keeping up my grades in junior year, trying to make sure I was on top of my extracurriculars. And like applying to college in senior year than to apply to too many scholarships. I do recommend the National Merit. I mean, if you're taking the SAT or the ACT, you might as well also take the PSAT in junior year. You score high enough, right? Then you're placed in the pool to potentially win $2,500, which is definitely quite a bit towards your college education. Can you provide some research resources? In terms of like how to conduct, this is actually a tough one. There's no one prescribed way to conduct research or get started with research. My personal experience again was in my high school class where I would basically read a lot of papers and from there go forth. But I think the blogs that I've linked, maybe the MIT blog does have advice on like programs you can participate in for research and maybe also how to get started on research. But again, I think research is really about how you get inspired by a specific problem. Do you recommend any writing competitions? Again, there's a lot of them. I think like Scholastic is obviously the big one. I think New York Times also offers some of the competitions, but really, definitely the big one is like Scholastic by far. If you want, you can try to submit your work to actual like writing magazines, like I don't know, Counterclock Literature is one of them. Um, but I find that those are sometimes like more difficult to publish in, and they take like more creative writing. But in terms of writing competitions, Scholastic is definitely the way to go. Millions of submissions are received each year, so it's really big all across the U.S. And it has basically awards in every category of writing, right? No matter what you want to do, journalism, creative, critical, poetry, etc. My research experience before RSI was really stemming from my time in my high school's research class, where I would explore things and like latch on to topics from there and take deeper dives into them. And then again, I participated extensively in the MathWorks Honor Summer Math Camp. My sophomore year, I did a pure math project really involving hypergraph theory and matrix algebra. How did you develop good writing habits? Did you ever go to any writing camps? I mean, I think I probably did go to like some writing summer camp in elementary school. So just somewhere around Houston. I don't remember the name. Maybe it was like writers in the school or something like that. I didn't go to writing camps in middle school for sure. So I don't think writing camps are especially important. I just think the experience of writing and then making sure the grammar is good, like writing, revising, reading. That's the cycle that you really need. That's what I really focused on in high school, and so I don't think writing camps are that important. So the reading, writing, revising habit is that habit that I would most likely recommend. Book list. Okay. Of course it's different for elementary, like middle and high schoolers. I think again, elementary school like Percy Jackson, Harry Potter are wonderful places to start. In terms of like more advanced, I think To Kill a Mockingbird is I read that around eighth grade or like seventh grade, eighth grade. That's American classic. A lot of the American classics are really profound books. And so other American classics might include, okay, well, there's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but that's more countercultural. I think there's always epics like John Steinbeck writes very well. I think I read Greek epics like Homer's Iliad, Odyssey. I've read books like called like 1984. That was really insightful. I think Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God. That was a very important book. I think there's a lot of significant books, but a lot of the time it's just reading like the American classics. So there's not necessarily one book that you have to read, but there's a lot of different books that are out there that people can really enjoy reading. And like the books I mentioned, I all really enjoyed, and I thought that they all provided me some perspective on how thinking and writing actually worked. So the final pre-submitted question is, can I share my experience with Scholastic Art and Writing National Awards? Yeah, so in ninth grade, I submitted, I think, 3 pieces to Scholastic. I believe it was 2 critical essays and a personal narrative. I think the personal narrative was about debate, and that got like either silver key or honorable mention. And the 2 critical essays, I don't remember what they were about concretely. I think one I was taught in one of them I was talking about like um potentially like misuse of big data for like government surveillance or something. And those both got regional gold keys, which I was pretty happy with, but nothing national. And so sophomore year, I won 3 awards nationally. I think I won like 7 regional gold keys and some like silver keys and honorable mentions. But the national awards, I remember the gold medal I won was for a critical essay about like Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I also recommend that book. A lot of people who I know say it's boring. I don't think it's boring. I think you should read it. Um, but that was a great book. And I think that essay and those types of essays are generally pretty successful because if you write really well and you can analyze the book well and then link it to some modern phenomenon, I believe I had linked it to like rape culture in America, then that's a really powerful and compelling essay. I think I won like 4 silver medals and 1 gold medal nationally, Scholastic overall, and I got like 20 something, maybe 30 almost gold keys by the end of like high school. And I think some of the other essays I wrote about were social media and its influence, the anti-science phenomenon. I co-wrote a really long journalism article. I was like the first author about like the Asian American experience at my school and like within the broader community. And so those all received like national recognition. And I don't necessarily think it's one specific idea, but it's about identifying an idea that's really meaningful, or one that's like really connected with the text of a book, and then trying to connect it with some sort of social like modern idea that you really care about and that you can write passionately and compellingly about. That is part of like what makes a winning national level essay. So that's really the extent of my experience with the Scholastic Awards. And of course, I can go into like more details of any of these questions in the next Q&A section. But I think maybe I can just start answering a lot of the questions that have popped up in the chat. Should I just like go from the top?
Sure.
Okay, so I think the first question I received, let me scroll all the way back up. So somebody asked like which math camp did I attend? Sorry, I didn't catch that. So yeah, I was answering in the chat. I attended the MathWorks Honor Summer Math Camp. I'll put the name in the chat. Honors Summer Math Camp. It runs for 6 weeks between like late June and like early August. So that's the name of the camp. Second question was, what is the writing competition? Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Third, how did you prepare for Scholastic? And did you attend any writing classes / summer workshops? Again, no like writing classes or summer workshops, except for maybe like elementary school, which I don't really count. Because I think honestly, I was like slacking off in those and I was like having fun. Like again, well, actually, again, it kind of links the idea of having fun, writing stories that aren't necessarily super meaningful when you're young, but that you're just very imaginative and you just get experience writing. So I think for Scholastic, again, one of the most important things is getting experience writing and not being afraid to submit whatever you have. Like the submission fee per piece is maybe like $7, which if you have pieces that you think are really high quality, don't be afraid to submit them. Because it probably will pay off in the end. Another question was, did you submit to different categories for Scholastic to increase the winning chances? Well, I mean, I don't know if it was to increase the winning chances, but I actually had a lot of essays that I just wrote. I specifically had critical essays because every essay in my school was like critical essay. Like we didn't have like necessarily book reports, like opinion essays. We were like, my school's English classes are all about like really analyzing the text deeply and trying to draw out some sort of deeper meaning. So I had some on hand, so I just like submitted them. And so I would just submit like anything I had that I thought was like complete and in anywhere like near good shape to Scholastic. No matter whether that was my critical essays, my journalism, or other essays that I just wrote for the fun of it. So then comes like, so there's some other questions like, how did you start working on writing? How did you build your writing skills? I'll group those together. In terms of concrete things to do on writing, I've talked a lot about the reading and like writing and revising aspect of things. I believe that sometimes you just have to put the pencil down and start writing, or pick up the pencil and start writing, like put the pen to the paper. Sometimes I would go on this exercise where like I'd close my eyes, I would like black out my computer screen, like turn the brightness to 0, I'd get on a Google Doc, I just type my thoughts. And that was really useful. Another recommendation I have to get in the habit of writing, if you don't know what to write about, you can have a daily journal, right? You can type it, you can handwrite it, and just like have a few sentences on what happened that day, what did you like, what didn't you like, what you learned, people you met, stuff like that. It just gets you in the habit of thinking like a writer and actually writing and being able to communicate your ideas. So I would say that in terms of how to start working on writing and how to build your writing skills, just get in the habit of practicing writing, spewing out your ideas. At first, it can be conversational, but gradually you'll find that like your grammar will improve, especially when you begin to read more advanced work, like as in professional work, whether that may be like news outlets or like press releases or whatnot. You'll find that your grammar can naturally improve. And so once you have your ideas and once you're in the habit of writing, I think that the foundation is all there to become a good writer. Next question. Oh shoot, I need to go back a slide. Sorry, this is the actually, okay, I don't have any. Yeah, I'll stay on the slide. So what tips do you recommend to get past the regional scholastic writing level if you're going on the national level? Honestly, if you're in Harris County, I think Harris County is a pretty difficult region. And so being a regional medalist or regional key winner is already like significant. But in terms of national level, I find that some like pieces that win on the regional scale are more like cute pieces. As in like they can be well written and they can be enjoyable to read, but they don't necessarily talk about an idea that is like super, super profound, or that is super, super relevant to the modern world. And so I think that it has to be something extra, something that will make the judges have a personal investment or a real like knee-jerking emotional reaction to your piece that can help you get past the regional level into the national level. And I think technical complexity definitely matters. Once you get further on into high school, there's a lot of books that you can probably use to improve your grammar skills. I would recommend definitely having proper grammar in all of your writing. Don't like, it's okay to start writing off informally if you're doing like a daily journal or writing exercises, but in terms of formal writing, you need to learn how to write formally, and that could come through practice, but it does need to happen. And then complexity of idea also matters, right? It's not just having one meaningful idea, but it's maybe having like a syllogism or a progression of several ideas, right? And if I were to like, again, oh, there appears to be a noise. If I were to again like talk about some of the critical essays I've written, the book I wrote my gold medal winning essay was called Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I'll put it in the chat actually. Just in case y'all want to like read it in a bit. But so I think that having longer essays that are connected with both books, like the text, as in like what specific things mean as in terms of the plot, in terms of a greater central idea, and linking that with a social idea, that is really that in totality is the key of how you can move from a regional key to a national key or a national medal. Somebody asked what writing categories I participated in. I did a lot. Some of them were like critical essay, journalism, flash fiction, short story, dramatic scripts, even poetry, like just a lot of things. So basically, actually, maybe that's like almost all categories. And there's just a lot of categories basically. And again, it doesn't really matter which category you submit in. There's like a category. I did science fiction as well. So there's like a lot of different categories you can submit in. Basically, any piece you can write fits one of those categories, I think. Somebody asked, what did you take as foreign language in high school? Did you take AP Chinese without taking the class? Thank you. And so I took AP Latin in high school. That was my only language. I started Latin in middle school. So, but like our middle school classes were like not, of course, not like super rigorous because it's middle school. So in high school, I started with like Latin 3, I think, in freshman year, and I did AP in sophomore year. Other people I've known have done AP in like junior year. I did not take AP Chinese at all. Did not take the class, did not take the test. Honestly, I found that like that wasn't necessarily the best use of my time. It would have been an extra AP to be sure, but honestly speaking, in terms of like pure college admissions, I'm not sure how much of an impact it would make for me as like a Chinese student to be taking the AP Chinese test and doing well, right? That's just my honest opinion. But if you want to take AP Chinese, I say by all means do it. I didn't though. Somebody asked like, how do I read any specific method? Can I recommend the books I think have influenced me? Okay, so I've already mentioned some of the books that I've read. I would like to add to that list. There is a book by the late Tony Xie, the founder of Zappos, or the CEO of Zappos at one point. It's called Delivering Happiness. I think that was a really good book for me to read about like thinking and doing and like solving problems. There's just some other English classics like Pride and Prejudice. And there was a play I read in 8th grade called A Raisin in the Sun. A lot of those classics just I felt gave me insight over how to be able to read / write pretty well. And so for specific methods of reading, honestly, I would say if you're reading something for a class or you're reading something specifically to learn, it never really hurts to annotate. And that does not mean like mark down every single line and like circle every single word and like write down something, but that just means like make a note of you can like mark down on the page some of the things that you think are most important, right? Like what jumped out to you like, as a reader? Did you think there was anything really surprising, really intriguing, something that you want to learn? Was there a phrase or like a word you really liked? Stuff like that. So that's kind of the way of close reading that I think can really help people develop as a writer. Okay, so there are one more question is what should 7th and 8th graders do to prepare for a good resume? I think that being able to like develop your skills in a lot of different aspects is the most important thing. Like I do not have any specific activities that I say that people must do to gain like gratification and achieve success in high school. There's basically a path for anybody. But I do think that it's important to have the most important like skills that can give you a foundation, like critical thinking, problem solving, communication, stuff like that. Okay, I see somebody raise their hand. If you want to like DM your question to me or like put it in the chat, I can answer it later, but I'm not sure about like raising hands. I think it would be kind of unfair to everybody if I just like answer the question right here and while like skipping everybody else's questions. So in terms of what you can do as a 7th or 8th grader, I'll say definitely read. And it goes back to my first theme of like exploration. If there are a lot of topics which you think you might enjoy, just explore those topics. You're an 8th grader, your grades matter, but they don't matter as much as they would in high school. So take the time to explore different subjects. Maybe it's contest math, maybe it's physics, maybe you really like writing, maybe you really like running, maybe you want to ice skate or play basketball, anything like that could be a very valuable thing to do. Maybe you even like debate, volunteering, all of those could be great. Just make sure that whatever you do, you are doing it in a conscientious manner, as in you do it with a purpose of exploration. And you also do certain things that will help you gain perspective. One of those things can be reading, perspective on life, and also gain like critical thinking and problem solving skills. And to this, I really recommend contest math. It's obviously not a must to do math, but I think there's like not that many activities which can give people critical thinking skills from a young age. And I think problem solving things like math are really good for that. Okay, did I found my own organization for my leadership roles? That's another question. not all my leadership roles. I mean, some of them were established organizations, like editor in chief of my school newspaper. I definitely expanded the newspaper when I was editor in chief, and we like more cleanly developed like the online format, and more like we refined the print format as well, and we focused more on like staff recruitment and training. But I didn't start every organization that I led. Same thing for like Science Olympiad. I wasn't a leader. I wasn't the founder, but I was like, the president and the leader. So I was busy recruiting people, training people, participating in a lot of events. I did start 5 Star tutoring service. And I recruited some friends, other kids from St. John's to help, and we like tutor kids from around Houston. I also started my school's artificial intelligence club. And so it was kind of a mix, founding organizations and like continuing existing organizations. But I don't think it's necessary to found like 5 organizations, for example, right? Um, Another question was, how did I start the mentor activity? And if I did this in high school, how did I find time to do it? I assume you're talking about 5 Star tutoring. And so that started in like sophomore spring once COVID hit. I think obviously COVID is a really terrible thing, but a lot of people got lucky during COVID in that they were able to find ways that they could help other people. Before COVID hit, I really would have had no idea that like there was even a need for online tutoring. I guess I'd read about like public/private school, like charter school, like disparities before, especially among like neighborhoods that are like underprivileged. But I'd never fully realized the disparity of if like a neighborhood doesn't have like strong like wireless equipment, right? If a lot of people's houses don't have strong Wi-Fi or like phones or computers which they can just connect to the internet, or they have rough family situations, then it can be really hard to learn. So that's when I started it. I found time to do it over COVID. That's to answer the second part of the question. Because like school over COVID, remote learning, I think everybody has shared this experience, wasn't as intense as normal school would be. And obviously I did devote quite a bit of time during the summer. I didn't have to go anywhere because that was 2020 summer. But again, it was just trying to see any opportunity that could come up, ask myself, how could I help? And then jumping on that and executing, and not like waiting or second guessing myself. Somebody messaged me, how do I describe my writing style? I would say because of my competition experience, I'm pretty analytical. So I've kind of had to force myself to think a lot about like the different ideas that I would consider before necessarily jumping into one. Because sometimes if I latch onto an idea before like really thinking about the different angles or the different perspectives, then I'll just like start purely analyzing, and I'll find that the writing will just go down some rabbit hole, which can still turn out well, but not necessarily how I want to. So I'd say writing style is pretty analytical, but I've tried to be more fluid throughout high school. For one of my senior year papers, I experimented with like stream of consciousness writing, which is like a form of writing where you are essentially just like writing nonstop, and you're not like filtering your thoughts until like the revision process. And actually, a book I recommend for that is called The Sound and the Fury. It may have some mature content, but I think like when you get older, it could be a good book to read. It's another American classic. Another question was, how do you think your skills in writing help your RSI application? Honestly, I don't know. Possible. I really don't know though how RSI judges applicants. Maybe they have like more to talk about it than I do, but I do think that like being able to communicate is a valuable skill. And I know that writing college essays, especially writing is being able to write is important. So even if it's like not for a specific summer program, being able to write is not just a skill that you're going to need in the far future, and it's not just something that's enjoyable, but there's also a direct practical application in college and even in like your school class grades. Okay, question: how do you found a nonprofit organization? Legal work is kind of messy for a student to carry out. I'm also looking into doing a community service project without the legal paperwork. Yeah, founding a 501 or 503c organization. I did not do that. Some people have done that, but it is quite a bit of paperwork. Honestly, I think you can just start a community service project. It doesn't have to be super, super formal. What matters is that you're getting it off the ground and that you're actually trying to help people, not necessarily what like the organization is like called or registered as. Okay, another private message question is, what are your greatest tips and things to watch out for writing, and did you have any mentors? Tips and things to watch out for. I would always make sure you have some central idea to your writing. I very much enjoy outlining my writing. If when I'm like exploring what to write about, I will like find an idea. I'll like ask, oh, is there another idea I can write about? Is this the only idea? What is the flip side to this idea? And then I'll make like several outlines, maybe like one for each idea of like what I could possibly be like focusing on. Um, or really like writing about, right? I think outlining is an essential part to writing because you may seem tedious, but it really helps you organize your thinking. Because if you're going to try to read like a essay that's like 800 words, 1,000 words, even like 2,000 words, and you just jump into it, you don't know where you're going, and you may find yourself derailed at the end, right? Some writers can do that, but definitely not all writers. Okay, another question was, do you have time for this social life? If yes, when do you have time for it? I would say I had some time. I tried to make friends among the tennis and cross country teams. And that was also another consideration I had actually when I was choosing cross country in addition to tennis. The tennis team at my school isn't very large. And I knew that like if I did tennis seriously after school and did a lot of tournaments, I wouldn't have that much time to be able to like talk to people from my school. So I made the conscious choice to join the cross country team, which is like maybe 50 people. So I could know a lot more people and not just purely for the social aspect, but for the aspect of like meeting other students, getting to know them, and making friends with them, um, picking their brains on like how to survive high school stuff like that. Um, so that was a lot of my social life. I didn't really go to that many parties until like second semester senior year, just because I didn't have time for it. Like I didn't even like go to homecoming in fall of senior year, just because like I mean yes it's important, but also I had other goals that I wanted to focus on. So I just decided, well, I mean it's just like one homecoming, right? Like if you go, sure, that's your own choice, not me. Another thing, should you include small awards on a resume? What things should go on a resume for college applications? So I'm not going to talk too much about college apps, but I know the Common App, which a ton of colleges use, a ton of the top colleges use it, and I think UT this year is adopting it as well. They didn't used to use it, but I think UT is going to use it now. They allow you to list like 5 awards there, and there's also an additional information section where you can like write more about yourself. So I don't think small awards are necessarily critical for a resume for college applications. Some colleges can also let you upload a resume. I don't think Harvard, for example, let me upload a resume when I was applying. That may change, but it's really college dependent. And so the answer to your question is, I mean, small awards you can put them, but I would say you want to focus on the awards that are most meaningful to you. Other question, who is your role model? I've had several role models throughout high school. And they've not necessarily been like the most necessarily academic superstars, but some of them have been. I remember in middle school and like early high school, I really looked up to Andrew Tai actually. Um, I met him actually not at math, but at a debate camp, I think, maybe like after 5th grade, after 6th grade. And he just struck me as somebody who wasn't really only really good at math, but also a very down to earth person. And so a lot of my role models have been like down to earth people. There was a kid in my grade called, or not kid in my grade, kid in my school called Sam Faraguna. He was a cross country captain when I was a freshman, and I found that he was a really great person. Always loved to give great like he gave great advice to me. Was a very organized person. Wasn't too like he wasn't really active in the high school like Olympiad scene or whatnot, but he had a very enjoyable and fulfilling high school career as well. I would as like in terms of role models in like real life or like actual established role models, I would say maybe Elon Musk has definitely been a role model for me. So has Bill Gates and Zuckerberg. These guys are definitely like weird at times, very weird at times, but the visions they're trying to create, the expertise that they have, and their communication skills, I think it makes them worth learning from, even if they're not perfect, because no one is perfect. And so someone else asked me, what if my passion isn't realistic? Okay, to that I say, well, why shouldn't it be realistic? Um, if you're like trying to start, I don't know, for example, tutoring organization, I didn't know that I would have like thousands of tutoring hours in the tutoring organization when I started. At the start, I thought maybe I'd get like 5 students, that'll be it, right? I never knew like I would win Scholastic awards. I just thought like, sure, like I'm gonna write, I'm gonna submit. Why not? Like, let's see what happens. And I definitely didn't think I was going to make it into RSI. I just thought, well, I'm gonna apply and see how I do. So I think don't limit yourself by like saying you don't have a realistic passion, right? Like some kids, I guess another example is contest math, right? Or any competitive Olympiad. Let's say you want to make the IMO team, right? International Math Olympiad team for the US one day. 6 people make the team. And it's so difficult to even get to like USAMO. And then further than that mop, right? Much less make the IMO team, right? That's like the most talented moppers. But people are able to do it. And they may not expect to be able to do it, but they are somehow able to muster the willpower together and study and really plan well and execute, and they find that they're able to do it. Now, yeah, I can't really think of any passion that's not super realistic. I mean, if you want to cure cancer, that might be a bit out of the window at this point. But then again, like research or like biology Olympiads would still, I feel like, be kind of similar to that. Somebody else asked, what year did I do research? What was my major in college? I did research basically all throughout high school, like every year of high school. My major, probably gonna major in pure math right now. I'm considering like minoring or maybe also adding a major in like CS, stats, econ, or physics, but it's really fluid right now. But I applied as I think like math, CS, maybe applied math, stats, stuff like that. Did I attend any out of school research programs? How to find it? Again, this is Honor Summer Math Camp at MathWorks. I put it in the chat, and I think the link is in the chat, so I won't go into any more details beyond that. How did I manage my time and activities effectively? That was definitely a big grind. I did not expect, or I didn't like, I wanted, or let's just say that I knew that I would have a lot to do in high school. I wasn't really super prepared for the overwhelming nature of it at the beginning. So I will admit that as a freshman, like I still sometimes like played video games. And I was like, oh, maybe like I don't know, watch YouTube like during a free period instead of like working. But I found that again, making plans and to-do lists of what I wanted to do slash accomplish was super important. It helped me gain an idea of like what are all of these things that I need to accomplish by a certain point, and then given all these things, like, will I have time to like do other things? Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. So time management really it's just mastering or getting an idea of all of your tasks, I think. And that's the key. At times I would like limit my sleep, but I didn't see that as like something that I really wanted to do. I saw it as like something that like I would have to like sacrifice. Somebody asked like, is it okay if people do not go into STEM? I'm currently focused on academic research, leadership, and writing and STEM. Yes, for sure. I think there's a reason why like a lot of people who don't necessarily go into STEM get admitted by the top colleges and end up doing super well in their lives. And there's also a reason why even like people like moppers, for example, don't necessarily get admitted by top colleges, right? STEM is neither necessary nor sufficient. I think it's about finding a passion and truly being passionate about something and building something that's like, or working towards something that's bigger than yourself. That is going to help you achieve fulfillment and success on a ladder scale. Next question is HSMC for Texas students only or anyone in the US? What's the general qualifications for ninth grader? Honestly, it ranges. HSMC is not only for Texas students. Actually, my roommate at HSMC, my fellow counselor, is from Oregon. And general qualifications for ninth grader, it really does vary. I mean, I've known people who are qualified for AMY who have like not gotten in. I've known people who have not qualified for AMY and don't have like a really huge background in competition math in general who did get in. I've known like USAMO qualifiers who also did get in. So, I mean, it does vary, but I think the most important thing is making sure that your passion for math is evident in not only your application, but also all the other like activities that you do and your interactions with other people. Next question, did you take any other classes non-relevant to STEM, writing, or leadership? For example, swimming or instruments? No, I didn't really swim. I think I tried swimming when I was younger, but I really tried to stick to cross country and tennis in high school. So not swimming, but I think that like swimming it's fine as a sport, right? I don't see anything wrong with it. Instruments wise, I think instruments are also great. Some of my closest friends are extremely talented with their instruments, as in like all states. Very passionate about them, and not even like necessarily making all state, but also like being like composers, right? Or playing a ton of pieces, like weaving that into their academic life somehow, that's all fine. Instruments, I didn't do them personally, but I think they're great. And I really appreciate people who are able to do them because they're able to make great music that the rest of us can all enjoy. Please recommend novels and philosophy books. So, I mean, I can just like try to list some novels I know, and maybe we can like work from there. There's not like a set list of novels that you have to adhere to necessarily. And same thing for philosophy books. I didn't really read philosophy books. I know like when I was doing debate, there's a Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy that has like a lot of philosophy topics on it. It's kind of like difficult to read at times, especially if you're a middle schooler. But I would say that's a really good philosophy website. Let's see. In terms of like novels to read, I think there's a lot of classics that people could be reading. Let's say Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison is a great one. Huckleberry Finn is great. Scarlet Letter, I love the Scarlet Letter. Again, like To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Gatsby, Steinbeck. I love Steinbeck. The Grapes of Wrath. That one is good. I've been trying to read Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. I haven't like finished it, but I believe that's also a good book as well. On the Road by Kerouac, it's a countercultural book. It's tremendous. Those are just some examples of the books I enjoy. Fahrenheit 451. The Road, right? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Even like The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. There's so many good books out there. And reading even a few of them, I think, will be very, very beneficial. Next question is, how do I balance life and studying? Do I consider tennis as a sport or part of my academic success, or as a hobby, a way to relax or keep healthy? I consider more as a hobby. I didn't really think about it super in terms of like success, especially through high school. When like I knew that tennis was not how my life was defined. Like I knew I was not like trying to be recruited by any colleges or anything. For tennis, I would generally like think of tennis as like a way to get my body out, like get the energy out. Think about something other than hitting the books for a while. So in that aspect, I would say balancing life and study to a large extent involves like taking breaks, knowing when to like go on a run maybe, or like hit some tennis balls, read a good book, take a nap, and I would definitely consider tennis as like a hobby and like a way to keep healthy. So somebody asked about SAT on unweighted GPA. I'm not gonna really straight up answer that question. I will say my SAT and GPA, like the GPA was like our school's on a 99 scale, so I was a very high A, I can say that. And the SAT, it was also a very high score that everybody would be contented with. But I'm not gonna go further beyond that. I think that's more of a private thing.
Russell, I just want to mention now it's 8:38, so we're about the 38 minutes past the hour.
Oh man.
Yeah, so time flew. So if you can just maybe pick 3 more questions, because I just want to respect
Okay,
for everybody's time. Thank you.
got it. I'm gonna like look at some of the other questions and think about them, or try to figure out which ones to pick. Okay, I'll just straight off the bat. I'm not going to talk about college applications really per se. I don't think I'm an expert in that. So I'm not really going to talk about that many questions. So one question I think was, okay, how many hours do I sleep on average in senior year? I'll say like hey, 5 to 6. That's pretty quick. Another one was how do my parents influence me? And is that like positive or negative? Okay, so I think being able to, I felt like my parents have influenced me in a really good way. And I chose to answer this question because it's about like personal development and not just like something I'll like try to put on a resume. I think so many parents are very dedicated towards their children, and my parents always made it clear to instill like good values in me, like the value of like hard work, the value of respecting others, the value of like being kind and courteous. And so I think those helped me develop not only as a student but also as a person. And so I think they definitely very, very positively impacted me throughout high school. And I always knew that I would be able to go to them if I had any like problems or concerns, and they were able to like tell me it was okay and like give me a hug, right? So that was very positive. Let's see.
All right, let's go with one more question.
One more question. So there's a question about regrets in high school. And honestly, there are some regrets in high school. I think people think back all the time and wonder, is there another could I have done anything else to help me, right? Like sometimes I do regret not spending enough time, for example, in tennis, enough time in like competition math. But again, I think it's not necessarily about like what everybody else is doing. It's about finding your own path, finding the things that you yourselves do enjoy, and not doing things just because people tell you to do them or because other people are doing them, right? And I think if you're doing the things that you really want to do, you'll find that you may have some decisions that you felt like you could have made otherwise. There may be some hypotheticals that you could have, you think you could have like pursued instead, but you'll find yourself much happier and more fulfilled if you pick things that you want to do that can help you wake up every day and do them really well. And yeah, I think that's the last question I'm going to be answering tonight. And I think that kind of sums up my whole talk. Trying to find things you really enjoy. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
And Russell, thank you so much. I think this is very informative. I think this is an hour and 40 minutes well spent for everybody. So thank you so much. And I wish you the best luck at Harvard. Enjoy your college life in Boston. It's beautiful.
Thank you.